All right, y'all. How are y'all doing? You know what time it is? It is the League of Black Male Voters. We are back again. It is today Saturday. It's Saturday, so first and foremost, make sure you set your clocks back because, well, it's fall back, spring forward, fall back. Set your clocks back. Guess you get an extra hour tonight. We're going to get into our conversation this evening. I know some of you have already voted, and others of you have not. If you are still looking for who to vote for and want some ideas, we might talk a little bit about that. But what we really want to focus on is what to do after. We don't know who's going to win. All right, sounds good. But we're going to have to deal with that on the other side, right? And here at the League of Black Male Voters, we are about advocating for our own interests from a foundational Black American point of view. But of course, it ain't me. It ain't just me. It's a whole bunch of us. You can see Brother Samuel's got his head down there, and he's writing, right? His mind is ready to go. It's sharp. We're sharpening iron today. Brother Samuel, how you doing?
I feel great, Marwan. Thanks for asking.
Oh man, anytime, my pleasure. And then of course we've got Gylan. Gylan, you sit up just a tad there, so we get you. Yeah, we need the whole beard up in there. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh man, come on, man. We got a show. You know what your phrase is. It don't matter what's happening.
I'm blessed and highly favored.
Man, I'm favored and highly blessed. That's how it goes. And then tonight we also have Mr. McGrew with us. Rod, how you doing?
Doing all right, a little tired, but here nonetheless.
All right, present but accounted for. And so this is the crew this evening. We are missing one, but you know, I'm sure that he is here with us in spirit. As such, let us I'm gonna open up my voters ballot real quick here and get ready to vote. Now, I had intended on talking to some of the candidates for you, but again, many of you have already voted. So we're not going to spend too much time on that this evening. Now, depending on where you live, if we're talking about here in the city or in the county, your ballot might look a little bit different based on who you're voting for. And then wherever you are listening to us throughout the country, of course, your ballot is going to look different. But the one thing that we all have on our ballot is the President of the United States. All right. And so you will see if you do have your ballot, there are quite a few options on there. All right. Just hold that up there for a second so you can see all the different presidential options. All right. Uh, Now I'm gonna tell y'all who I'm voting for, and then if any of you guys want to talk about who you're voting for or why, please feel free. I am not voting for Kamala Harris, as I did not vote for Biden. Uh, Biden was tremendously problematic, especially with his uh, crime bill that incarcerated tens of thousands of black men, and so there is no way that that would happen. On top of that, he showed himself while running for office, right? You ain't black if you ain't voting Democrat, right? He's been telling you all along that he hasn't changed and this is who he is, right? But said that Trump was an existential threat and that we had to vote uh, against Trump because, well, things were going to be bad for us. But we've had 4 years of Trump, have we not? Mm. And for many folks that are very practical and are in the political sphere, right? They're looking at their gas prices, they're looking at rentals, they're looking at all of the basic things to survive. And they're saying, hey, when Trump was in office, things weren't as bad, right? One of the conversations we have in our circle is, we grow up playing the dozens and we have a very unique relationship with the N word on who can use it, should we use it ourselves, and whatnot. And we are gaslit and told, well, Trump said some bad things, so you can't vote for him. which I find problematic. Uh, Sticks and stones, right? Ultimately, what did you do? Biden, Trump can serve another 2 or 3 terms, and he couldn't do what Biden has done while he was in the Senate. That said, I'm also not voting for Donald Trump. Uh, I find Donald Trump to also be problematic. Okay. Now, if I only had the choice of the two, I would vote for Donald Trump before I voted for Kamala Harris. That is a fact, 1000%. However, I am voting for the Green Party. So I am voting for Dr. Jill Stein and Dr. Rudolph Ware. If I have some time before the weekend is out, I will actually play some videos from the Black Authority that interviewed both Jill Stein and um, Dr. Rudolph Ware and got their perspective, especially since the Democrats and the Republicans both pushed through lawsuits and tried to make sure that there were only two parties to vote for, right? And so when you look at both sides of the coin, and they're saying it's existential on both sides, right? You got to vote red, you got to vote blue, or democracy, right? All the things that, all the hyperbole that you hear, the one thing that they both agree on is we can't allow a third party to come into fruition. So to me, that kind of should tell you all that you need to know. That being said, that is where my vote is going for. And one of the big things is reparations for foundational Black Americans. Many folks are single issue voters, whether it be women and reproductive rights or abortion, whether it be the LGBT community or whatever those issues are. And so, as a foundational Black American male, we have every right to be one issue voters also. And so if you're not about reparations for foundational Black Americans, then, well, one, you're not getting my vote for sure. I think the men in this room feel the same way. Uh, but does anyone else want to speak on who they voted for president and why?
I voted for the Green Party as well.
Speak on it, sir.
Uh, and that's only because I didn't like the other two options. And I think that we need to have a third party. So that was my way of thinking.
Gotcha. And one of the things that they say to us is, it's just a wasted vote. That if you didn't vote for either red or blue, then your vote is wasted. I believe that that is different because if that was the case, why are these folks so afraid and why are they pushing through lawsuits? And
Mm.
when RFK tried to drop out, then you had, states trying to sue to keep him on the ballot to take votes away from Trump, right? So actually, it does have power. And so that's one of the tricks that both sides try to do is say, hey, you're wasting your vote. This isn't going to work. The country's not ready for a third party. Um, but we know that we are because most people actually identify as independent in this country. And so, if we, the people who outnumber the left and the right, all were to vote independent, wouldn't that make a change, right? So, literally, Jill Stein could win, right? Uh, Kamala and I'm gonna say Biden, Kamala and Trump could split votes, and she could have one more, and she could actually win, right? So that possibility is there. We have just been gaslit and educated, uh, and had paid targeting toward us to say, hey, it's not going to work. And you've had folks like AOC and whatnot to come out and tell you that you can't do that, right? But again, there was a time in this country where Black folks were Republicans and now we're Democrats. So who knows? Maybe that will change too. Uh, Samuel or Rod, either one of you guys want to talk on it before we move on from this topic?
No, I have no comment on the votes. I'm just still looking at,
What we're going to get into next?
of course,
All
right.
right. All right. Rod, how about you?
Well, I definitely am not voting for a Democrat or Republican. I am probably going to vote for Dr. Jill Stein as well. I've never been a party voter. I usually try to vote for the people who speak to my needs, and I find it very nearsighted to say I'm gonna vote for this party if this party isn't even addressing the needs that you have. So I go away from party, and as of right now, neither Democrat nor Republican seem to be addressing any of the needs that I need met.
Got you. All right. I appreciate that. As far as the Congressional District 6 U.S. Representative, I'll be voting for Drew C. McEwen. That is my vote. Also on here, we've got, let's see, some that was uh, notable for County Commissioner District 2. Still looking at either Sean Murphy or Orrin Root. I'm actually going to try to reach out to them and see if I can't get in touch with them before Monday.
Because Murphy's been in the seat
Uh,
presently, right?
no, that is Garrido
Oh,
is
okay.
in the seat. Um, but I may try to do a live phone call with them so you can hear from those candidates. Just ran out of time this week,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see any other ones on here. I think those are the only ones that really wanted to call out. Do look at your voters pamphlet, which you should have received in the mail, and it's pretty thick. You can also access this online. Okay. And if you have not voted or registered to vote this year, I believe it might be too late, but do check. Um, but we want to make sure that you're registered for next year. And if you are convicted of a felony, you are eligible to vote. So go to the website and register. Again, you may have to do that next year. I don't know what the time frame is on that. All right, as far as the ballot drop boxes, they will be open October 18th and will remain open until 8 p.m. on the day of the election, which is November 5th. There are 3 drop boxes that are nearest to my mailing address, and that's up there on West Park. At the Marvel Williams Center, Tracington at 4131 Pine Road, and then at Sylvan Way, the Kitsap Regional Library. Shout out to the Regional Library. There are several other drop boxes throughout Kitsap County. And if you want to vote in person, you can go to the Port Orchard Kitsap County Administration Building or the Bremerton Marvel Williams Center or the Paulsville Fire Station for other voting centers where you can vote in person. All right. All right. With that said, what I wanted to get into, or what we want to get into this evening, is we don't know who's going to win. Right now, the polls are looking pretty close between Trump and Kamala. And so it's a toss up. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there's going to be any shenanigans on either side once the election goes through. And so once the dust settles, we will have a new president. That said, we have our own issues that we want to see advocated for that we don't hear people talking about for us. As you know, I have spoken about the black male political agenda before on this channel. And so there are things that we will be advocating for into the new year. And so the goals of the League of Black Male Voters is not only to push through interest of black male voters in 2025, but also to identify candidates that identify with our interests and issues and can advocate for us. Okay. So on that, I'm going to read off 15 things that are important to us. I'm going to add one here and let's put that there. So the first one is family court reform. The second one is education. The third one is affirmative action. The fourth one is targeted homelessness programs. 5 is targeted unemployment programs. 6 is law enforcement. 7 is intimate partner violence, homicide, and policy reform. Number 8 is targeted cancer campaigning, treatment, and recognition. Number 9 is targeted small business support. Number 10, Social Security and life insurance family support. Number 11 is paternity leave. Number 12 is reverse voter disenfranchisement. Number 13 is black male specific reparations for the transatlantic slave trade through the 21st century and hyper incarceration. 14, the United Nations. We charge the U.S. with the genocide of the black male. 15 is redlining, and 16 is 2A. We are all 2A advocates here. And we believe that it is our fundamental right to own firearms to be able to protect ourselves and our family. All right. And I did add that one on. So if Gylan, you wanted to switch to that one, because you didn't necessarily want to talk about redlining, you can feel free to do so. But
Oh, we can hold that off for later. That could be
Okay.
a different one.
all right. So I want to start off with Samuel. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So we'll start off with Samuel. Samuel, which one are you going to talk about tonight?
The one I chose was law enforcement.
Okay.
Because oftentimes, if we've seen in the past, there's been some police officer shoots an unarmed African American male, or the police officer, like in George Floyd, uh, suffocates the man where he can't breathe. So in all these episodes, first of all, the police, they control the narrative by not allowing the general public to understand what's happened. In the past, no one has just really come forward with some straight talk. So I live here in Bremerton, Washington, so we don't really have I never had a problem with the police, but in other cities with our other brothers in Detroit, Chicago, Virginia, in those areas, we do have African American men who are grossly affected by police brutality, and especially when the police department will hold the narrative, it just keeps everybody at bay. And then number 6, it goes on to look at number D.
What page are you on now?
I'm on number 6.
Number 6. Okay.
It talked about when an officer shoots an African American male. Should that officer be charged with the crime, or should he just not have to be sued out of court? For me, that's very paramount, because we all stand a chance to be shot, because you step outside as an African American man, you're already armed and dangerous.
All right. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on our first topic, law enforcement, and ending qualified immunity specifically?
I believe that cops are held to a higher standard, definitely. But when it comes to infractions of the law, they should be held in the same regard as the citizens are. So if I were to shoot someone, I am tried and convicted and what have you. Cops should not be able to skirt that process at all. If they shoot someone, they should be tried, and if convicted, do the time like any civilian would. I think gone should be the days of cops having this immunity because they're a cop and their job is quote unquote dangerous.
Kind of a choice, right?
Right.
Gylan, what's your thoughts on ending qualified immunity?
Police officers should be held to the same as the military. The training is similar. Uh, the repercussions for uh, mishandling situations should be the same. If you're not, uh, there should be no one saying they were scared. If you haven't been, uh, if you're still in that point where you're saying you're afraid, then I think you're in the wrong job, or you haven't been trained long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Standards have to be upheld, and they should be to the same standards. Haven't been trained or haven't been uh, smallly trained. You're just trained for a short period of time. Uh, I know that you shouldn't be. There shouldn't be no incidences where full clips were emptied.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if anything, it should be two rounds fired off, check, reassess, and if the threat is still there, then fire two more rounds. But also, when you pull your weapon, you have to be able to justify why you had to pull the weapon.
Right.
So before you pull the weapon, if someone is unarmed, then you shouldn't be pulling the weapon because then that's improper use of deadly force. So
And we have countless examples on the news, on YouTube, of police officers uh, that maybe should have used lethal force and didn't at all. I mean, they're getting beat up
yeah,
by
yeah, yeah,
suspects,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then other times they just immediately go to the most lethal option possible
yeah,
when they have billy clubs and
yeah,
tasers
yeah,
and riot shields and beanbag
yeah.
rounds. And I mean, they've
And you
got a
may not
whole
always have,
host.
yeah, you're not going to always have your shield because that's riot gear,
Mm-hmm.
but you will have a club and you do have your taser. So,
And you're trained. It's almost
and you're
like
supposed to be trained. So
they're not
it's
trained to use it at all.
it's supposed to be certain places where you swing the club. You're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to swing the club at like the meatiest parts of the body. You're not supposed to swing for the joints. And when you tase somebody, you go through training to where you get tased,
Mm-hmm.
and that way you know what it's like before you use it. You know what it feels like, just like pepper spray. You get pepper sprayed first. That way you know what it feels like when you pepper spray somebody. You know what the reactions are going to be. So
Well, it just seems like if officers took a little bit more time, waited for backup before they, you see a lot of images where they're going in by themselves or with one other person, and they escalate things where they're talking crazy to people, and then they don't expect people to respond to that, right?
well,
Could I just
people need to get to know their communities.
Mm.
If they took the time to know their communities, they're going to know who the problem people are and know who's not any problem, and to say, hey, look, go home and deal with it that way. They don't necessarily have to just go to force every time.
I I also think one of the more bigger problems is one. I think people with in a demographic where there's a lot of police violence and police brutality, police should have more ride-alongs with I would say senior citizens in the area, but people who have lived in that neighborhood for 10, 20 plus years. Second of all, police officers need to hire people within the community, African American people or other people of other ethnicities in the community. And like Garland was saying, when you're a police officer, you have a less than lethal, which is a stun gun or OC spray. So when you have a individual who's doing a ride along, then that person can see firsthand how the situation played out. But I think the biggest problem is also is police officers. They spend a lot of time in courtroom type and classroom type scenarios where you're not really in the community talking, like Ghana said, involve yourself with those members. So if a cop lives in Bellingham or Renton and has to work here in Tacoma or Lakewood, it's a much different world for him. And then that's when Garland said police officers tend to say, "I was afraid," and you can be afraid, but you have to have the ability to talk and not rely on your weapon.
So let me ask both of you. You're both military veterans. Um, one, I feel like if you're in that position, you actually should be held to a higher standard. Uh, is that something that you guys agree with? You this is voluntary, right? This wasn't they weren't conscripted. It wasn't a draft. You wanted to be an officer, and so that comes with a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. So if you do something that's out of sorts, then you should be held accountable. The other thing is that we want police protection and safety. We want our law enforcement to protect and serve, right? And I think if an officer gets into a a conflict where they do have to pull out their weapon and shoot someone and potentially kill someone, if it's a clean kill, we are not just saying, hey, we need to, they shouldn't have done that. They should have found another way. Do you agree with that statement? Do you have a different thought on that?
I know recently there was a shooting in one of the cities where an African American woman was she was shot kind of like in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
The officer he fired around, he was behind, I would say, one of those kitchen islands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the officer had an opportunity to just even talk her down from that. The officer had a better position to get himself out of the house for safety. So it's just another point was trying to get was the body cam. His body cam um, did not even come on. So I think if an officer, like I said, with ride-alongs, body cams being on, using less than lethal force, uh, I think that would uh, start start a better process when we have these violent shootings or these no nonsense shootings.
All right. And Guylan, answer this question for me. Do you believe that if there is a situation where we're watching video of an officer and he or she had to take a life and it was just, that we would say, okay, we were on a jury say, okay, they did what they had to do in this situation. We're not looking for them to go to jail and be sued
I
when
mean,
that was the last option.
if it's just, yeah, because again, when you're in that line of work, you shouldn't be trained to shoot to kill. You're supposed to be trained to stop the threat. So whatever that entails to stop the threat, uh, you shouldn't have to really pull your deadly weapon unless they have a weapon of sorts that will you have to override that
Well, let me
weapon.
do that as an example. There's a suspect and they're shooting at the police.
Okay,
The
that's
police
different.
should be able to shoot back,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Yeah. So we're not saying, oh, police shouldn't protect themselves and they should never take a life. There are
No,
circumstances
there's
where
always
it's going
circumstances.
to happen.
Yeah.
I think people and the whole thing with defund the police really kind of lost its way because the message got demonized, but then two, taking money away from the police also wasn't quite the solution there. Ron, any final thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I definitely agree. I feel like they're trained and equipped to handle these situations, and if we are noticing that these situations aren't being handled properly or in a better manner, then maybe the solution is better training, more training, longer training, just better equipping the police. I don't think defunding them is the answer at all. I think let's fund them and better equip them with the better training and psychological testings and things like that, just to make sure that we are getting a police force that are well trained and in their right mind.
Mm, gotcha.
Yeah, they definitely should be vetted for psychologically. So
And
that
part of that is, let me just talk about B here really quickly. B is licensing law enforcement. So another thing that we're advocating for is law enforcement professionals have a revocable license that can be permanently stripped to keep them out of the profession, just like a lawyer or a doctor. Police are protected under the ruling of police protection from incriminating information or keeping their job. This can save plenty of black men, right? So what you see is a cop does something wrong, and if he's let go or he resigns, you find out that he's been hired as a cop in another town or another state, right? But he was problematic over here,
yeah.
and that's another thing. I don't think that they should be able to just resign and get out of it, right? Again, you're held to a higher standard. So if you do
Supposed to
something,
be held to a higher
you're
standard.
supposed to be,
Just
right?
like in the military, you're held to a higher standard.
That's right. So hey, if that costs you losing your pension and you can't provide for your family, again, it's a privilege. It's not a right, right? Um, Guess you're working at McDonald's. All right, so I just wanted to talk about those on that topic. One other one, which is C, proxy violence. The recognition of proxy violence as a criminal offense, punishable by no more than 50% of the primary prison time. I think that actually goes somewhere else, but I'm gonna just pop that in here for now. All right, so that was the first one. So Samuel did his. Who wants to go next? Rod or Guyland?
I'll go next.
You go next? Okay. So Rod has family court reform. All right. Why is this one important to us?
I believe that men, especially in the state of Washington, are vilified automatically in family court. And one of the things that really gets to me is Washington is referred to as a woman first state.
Mm,
My problem is it shouldn't be a woman first state. It shouldn't even be a man first state. It should be a child first state. And I can speak from my own personal experiences. I am what the state calls a non-custodial parent. I was a non-custodial parent, and I didn't duck child support. I didn't do any of those things. I paid my child support. My problem was I'm doing all these and I still couldn't garner the rights to 50% of my child.
mm,
So, one of my big things under family court is child custody. It seems that in Washington state, the woman is automatically granted full custody while the men have to fight for custodial rights. There's never a point where two people are sitting in court and it's a 50-50 thing automatically. You get your child 50%. There's always the woman gets the child and the man has to prove that he's even worthy of getting weekend visits unsupervised.
mm-hmm,
So I've always tried to figure out why is that? And I believe what these laws do is take the stigma of the black man, which has been pumped through our lives for as long as I've been alive, as we're just gangbangers and drug dealers and pimps and all this stuff. So the black man is already behind the eight ball when he goes into family court because you're going to get a judge sitting up there looking at you like, I bet he deals drugs or I bet he does this. So we're just going to give the mother custody and make this man prove that he's even worthy to have his child. When in my instance, you could be in the home being a great father, get a divorce, and you still have to prove that you were a great father.
mm,
And it just burns me up for that because, and I'm sorry, but the division of child support has become weaponized towards men, weaponized, where it's even a threat used by a woman. You keep messing with me, you keep doing this. If you don't give me what I want, I will call child support. This is a weapon, and it should not be. When we go to court, if you can prove that I'm a detriment to my son, then yeah, I don't deserve 50-50 custody. But if you can't prove that, why do I start behind the eight ball? Why do I start with zero custody and have to fight for some form of custody? So it's just this is one that's so personal to me because I've gone through it, and it's just not right. And this is a law that really really needs to change sooner rather than later.
all right, gentlemen, do you want to weigh in on that?
No, he pretty much he pretty much said it all.
All right, yeah, that was pretty complete there. All right, so just a couple other ones. This one's long and it's got several points. But one big one is mandatory paternity testing at birth. Um, Many of us know about Jerry Springer, and we've seen you are not the father. the numbers have been reported of upwards of 30% of the father who is on the birth certificate not being the actual father. And in many states, if you are put down on the birth certificate in good faith, because you're in a committed relationship, so you think, and she laid down with someone else and it's someone else's baby, that man is still on the hook for child support. In other situations, if you don't do it within a certain time, 2 years, that is an issue as well. And so there should be mandatory paternity testing at birth, regardless if there's a marriage or not. The numbers are, like I said, close to 30% as reported in some instances, and likely higher because many births from a marriage. Why would the husband have any doubt that that's not his child? And yet, and still, these things come out, and you're seeing now with social media and YouTube. There was a judge that found out that all five of his adult age children were not his, all five, right? So these things are horrible. Another one is reinstating at fault divorce standards, right? Uh, Divorce. We are all Christian men first and foremost, so we take the institution of marriage seriously, and being able to just hey, I'm tired, I'm bored, I don't want to be married anymore, is very problematic, and having at fault divorce being reinstated is also important to help restore the black family. If folks can just get married and get divorced at the flip of a switch, that is detrimental to the family, especially when there are kids. It is also very detrimental to the men, as oftentimes they're paying alimony or at child support, and as they go on to maybe try to find love and relationship with another person, they are bound financially to that previous marriage. We also believe that child support value system should be capped at $2,500 regardless of income. That's an important one. But F is one that I'll just touch on really quickly: the right to lifestyle. Right? We came together at a certain time. So if I've been playing basketball since I was 6 years old, and I made it to the pros, and now I'm a millionaire, and I marry you, and you've been working as a waitress, there is no expectation that you need to continue at my lifestyle after we've been divorced when I've been working since I was a child to get to this position. We split, we go our separate ways, and it is what it is. So that is a big one. And then also prohibiting jailing for failure of paying child support. This has been a lot of work has been done on this, so that's really good. But there have been suspension of passports, which I actually had my passport suspended. Suspension of driver's licenses, which is bizarre because men need this to go to work, but then you take the very thing that they need to earn the money to pay the child support that is mandatory for them, so they're in this trap.
Yeah, I if I could just speak on that.
Go ahead.
When I first got my order of child support, I didn't even know about it. So how can I start paying if I didn't even know I was turned into child support? I get a paper in the mail saying that my license is suspended. Okay, maybe that's a mistake. I called the Division of Child Support, and my caseworker told me catch the bus.
Mm.
Just that was her solution to the fact that if I'm trying to get to work to pay this child support, you guys have suspended my license. Now I have to not only pay child support but pay the money to get my license reinstated. But your answer to that is catch the bus to work. And where I lived, I would have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch enough buses to get to my job. So yeah, that's definitely one that really needs to be fixed as well.
All right.
I, I, I raised both of my kids at home, and I never ever came home and gave my wife $400 my oldest child and $300 my youngest child. No one does that, and so we've created a system where um, it's money over parenting,
Mm.
and that's not supporting the child. It's just it's just kind of crazy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Another one, income floor for child support. There should be a minimum set for anyone who's on child support, especially if they are chronically under the floor in terms of income. The government should provide opportunities for them to intern at an apprenticeship or a trade, and only if they quit or refuse to work should they have to bear the responsibility. But one of the things that happens is a child is brought into the world, and that child support starts ticking, and that man was not in a position to pay for the child, and those arrears are stacking up, right? And so they are starting from behind, and oftentimes they never do dig out. To that end, we won't touch on this one, a big one, but when we talk about um, my body, my choice in regards to women, that needs to go for men as well, right? So men do not choose whether or not the woman decides to have the child, put the child up for adoption, or to abort the child. As such, if we're looking at my body, my choice in regards to men, right? When we turn 18, we have to sign up for the draft, correct? uh, but we should be able to financially abort, right? One of the things that we've heard Kamala and the Democratic Party talk about extensively is saying, hey, women should have this option if they're in a position where, you know what, they're just not in a financial space to bring this child into the world. And while we don't agree with that, being Christian men, it is the right and that is the law of the land. But what's good for the goose must be good for the gander. And so we're talking about equity and equality on both sides, which is if the father is saying, hey, you know what, I never intended on being a father, I don't want to be a father, uh, and ultimately she has the choice, then he should be able to walk away from that without any consequence to him on that. All right. So now let's go ahead and get into the next one. I'll go and I'll save you for last, Gavin. How's that? Unless you're excited, you ready to go?
Nah, go ahead. 'Cause I'm just gonna read an overview on mine. So you can go ahead.
I can go ahead. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the one I'm going to speak about is number 13, and I'll put a link to where you can get a hold of uh, the Black Male Political Agenda. Again, shout out to Dr. Tiasan Johnson, PhD, and now 40,000 members of the Brotherhood of this report to put out there. And so we are looking for black male specific reparations for the transatlantic slave trade through the 21st century and hyper incarceration. Uh, as you know, we are definitely for reparations. We've talked about this before, where reparations have been paid to almost every category of folks globally, even those that we have not done harm to. And the United States has not paid for one of its original sins, which is slavery, chattel slavery, right? And so we're looking at 400 years, and we are still suffering the effects of slavery. And now we're seeing on the right this move to not talk about slavery and the impacts of what this country has done. Uh, and on the same time, the left has not gone forward and pushed through to make sure that foundational Black Americans received reparations. When Obama was elected, he had all forms of government and did nothing, right? And so reparations should be given to Black men to specifically focus on the exclusivity of treatment from the onset of slavery to roughly 1800, a time period where Black males were sought after to a greater degree than even Black women for enslavement. Their prioritization in lynching and terroristic mistreatment, the designation that they were only allowed 3/5 of a vote when given the right, then terrorized to not even be able to use it. And then, as you know, once we did have the right to vote, using the criminal justice system to hit us with felonies so that we could not vote, right? The targeted campaign to be brutalized and killed by law enforcement, and the target of hyper incarceration policies from Reconstruction, convict leasing through the 1970s in the prison industrial complex to now, which of course you heard me speak on Biden earlier in this, and his crime law bill, which incarcerated tens of thousands of black men and destroyed the black family as we used to know it back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, where the black family, blacks were married at a larger percentage than other demographics. Gentlemen, do you want to speak on that at all, on reparations?
Well, oh, go ahead. I want to say for me to speak on it will kind of tie into my topic, so I'll go last.
Okay, Samuel.
I would just say, you know, a lot of um, other ethnicities, they always say, well, you wasn't a slave. How could it affect you? Because pretty much every law during slavery and after slavery has affected us in some shape, form, or fashion. So I don't know what the formula would be for paying that reparation, but even without even doing any extensive leg work,
Well, they have. They've done the studies. They owe about 13 trillion adjusted for inflation.
Money ain't gonna fix it.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation, right? We're just talking about what's owed.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
advocating for cash reparations.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. How we get there, that's something we can fight for and talk about the details of it, but that is something that we're demanding. And no one on the left or the right is advocating for that, especially on the left, who says that they are, um, you know, they want and need our vote. And we have been voting Democratic as the second highest uh, voting bloc since the 60s, right? And we have not been made whole. So that is a huge issue. Ron, your thoughts, and then let's move on from there.
I think one of the big things about reparations, I wonder is if it will ever happen, if we'll ever get recognized enough to where the government realizes it should be done. I mean, it's always a good talk, but
Well, and I'm with you there, but
yeah.
the whole thing is that's what we're fighting for after the election, right? So
Okay.
that's what we're focused on. We're not really concerned with how hard is it, will we ever get there?
Well, it's not
That's
even a
what
matter of
that's
being
what we're
hard.
fighting for.
Is it even viable to do? Is one of the things I wonder.
That's what we're fighting for,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So they are able to give Ukrainians billions, tens of billions of dollars, and simultaneously give Israelis tens of billions of dollars at the same time. And then you're gonna say that you can't pay reparations, right?
Right.
Bullshit, right? We know they got the money, and or immigrants that they are paying billions of dollars to open the border and just have folks come in, right? We see what it looks like in Chicago and New York, and having folks staying in hotels and having thousands of dollars on EBT cards and everything else. So all of these things are happening simultaneously, and so yeah, they can, and they will, right? And so that's what we're fighting for. No more excuses.
Right.
You're going to do right. You're going to pay us what you owe, and that's cash reparations. And again, this is for foundational Black Americans only. This is not for folks that were in Jamaica or Haiti or South America, right? This is the United States. So we're talking about people that can trace their lineage back to American slavery, right? United States slavery. And we know for folks that say, well, uh, you weren't a slave, they also say, well, I didn't own any slaves. But the thing is that you profit and you live the privileged life that you live now because of the effects of slavery. Slavery is what allowed the United States to become the most powerful nation on earth, right?
Mm.
And this is why you have so many immigrants coming to this country, walking thousands of miles, flying, however which ways they are getting here, right? So you're coming here, you're not staying in your own country to fight and to change it, right? You're coming here because slavery was so good to the United States that, man, this is a better life for you to come here, right? So everybody uh, owes, right? Cash reparations. All right. And so this kind of goes into the last one that Guyland was going to talk about, and he's going to talk about redlining. And just to add to your conversation, Guyland, um, there is a.
I'm just gonna give an overview, but go
I know you are.
ahead.
But the city of Bremerton City Council, in their last meeting, I think it was their last meeting, did a presentation and talked about the projected growth here in the county.
Mhm.
And what they're saying in the next 15 to 20 years, home ownership for white folks is going to be 50% of all white folks that are homeowners. So that's every other homeowner that's white, 50%. That's the rate, right?
Mhm.
For blacks, 11%. 11%. Okay. So how are we decreasing in home ownership? And so that is proof positive that we are still continuing to suffer from slavery. Now, every other group is above us. And if I got that picture, I will pull it up while uh, Guyland is giving us his synopsis.
So, since it's not on the form, I had to look up some stuff. So it's basically, it says redlining is a discriminatory practice that involves denying or limiting financial services to neighborhoods with large populations of racial and ethnic minorities. The term comes from the idea that mortgage lenders would draw red lines around areas on maps to indicate neighborhoods where they wouldn't make loans. And so it was a prominent part of US federal housing policy in the mid 20th century and was primarily used to target African Americans. And basically, it prevented black households and other communities of color from assessing home mortgages and home ownership for decades. The effects of redlining are still felt today and have been linked to uh, racialized neighborhood poverty and other negative impacts. So, I guess I think I want to say after World War II,
Mm-hmm.
when the VA loans were given out, African American soldiers wasn't, even though we were actually allowed to have the VA loan, they just wasn't given loans. Even with that piece of paper that said, "Here, I served in the military. Here's my here's my proof." They still wasn't given loans. So that's initially how they started forming. That's when they first started forming black neighborhoods in the inner city. And so instead of saying, "Oh well," while they were giving out land in what became the suburban areas to other people, they withheld those loans from us. So instead of being able to get any kind of wealth or have your own land, we were denied that. So it says some of the long-term effects of redlining include wealth gaps. Uh, it says people who were unable to buy homes due to redlining didn't develop the equity that would allow their children and grandchildren to buy homes. Uh, health inequities. Research has shown that the built environment is a significant determinant of reproductive health, and redlining can still drive neighborhood health inequities. Um, the Fair Housing Act of 1968 outlawed redlining, but the effects of the practice continue to be felt today. Some policymakers are considering reparative policies to address the legacy of redlining, and some jurisdictions are prioritizing black households and other disenfranchised groups.
And so how do they make that right when uh we lost out due to eminent domain? Oh, we got to build a freeway. That's part of redlining.
Yep.
Oh, we need to build a sports arena. You know, our land has been taken from us in a myriad of different ways, uh, or our property values have been destroyed. And then we see the gentrification that happens where folks come in and they're able to buy property at pennies on the dollar and then move us out, right? And then we own nothing. And so that is definitely one of those things. So redlining has a lot of issues. The Homestead Act is another issue that impacted us negatively. And so there are a lot of different things there where we suffered. And so we need to be made whole in that way. And so that one definitely is a big one. Gentlemen, did you want to reflect on, uh, excuse me, redlining at all?
Could I just say one comment?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this packet and it has all the topics 1 through 14. But if this was set up in a connected dot, African American foundational black men have suffered from all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And sitting here listening to God, I just remembered Dr. King said in a speech, whoever gets behind in the race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man in front.
Mm.
And I just, just looking at this, it just kind of makes me think, um, will we ever catch up? Because we've seen where we started from, but how do you um, really catch up? If you're not thinking about this all the time, you have to ask yourself, like, what? How do I get caught up? And
And
then,
if you're not taking action on it, right?
right,
And so what has happened is, black folks have championed everyone else's issues, whether it be LGBT or women's rights or etc. And we've watched them make gains, leaps and bounds, which is fantastic. However, with all that advocacy, we've watched ourselves continue to sink lower and lower and lower. Now, this one's hard for the gentleman to see, but on your screen now, you're actually looking at uh, the PowerPoint slide from that city council presentation. And so, as you can see, this is the housing tenure by race and ethnicity. Basically, 46% of people will be homeowners, 50% of those will be white. Households of color will be 35. Other race will be 39. Hispanic or Latino of any race will be 32. Asian will be 54. And you can see Black or African American will be 11%. So 89% of us will be renters. So we're talking about how hard it is to find affordable rent here in Bremerton, which is damn near impossible. And surprisingly enough, even with that, our rates are below, I believe, the county and the state. But that is a pretty steep graph that you're looking at. So 89% of us will be, this is the future, right? This isn't now. They're saying things are going to get worse for us. So we're not going to be able to afford to live here. So 89%, almost 90% will be renters. So how do you fix that? How do you switch that? You have Kamala Harris saying, "Hey, we're going to give you $25,000 as a loan for a down payment on your house," right? So if you need to have 20% down, well, you're talking about a home that's less than 250,000, right? For sure, because 10% would be 250,000. So you would have to put money with that. Where are they going to get the other $25,000 to try to get a home that's worth 200,000? Well, the average median price of a home now, I think, is close to four something. So that's not going to get it. So her idea to help with housing isn't going to help Black Americans, even in Bremerton. Even in Bremerton. And then, as far as businesses, if you looked at her plan that she said, which there's some big issues there, but oh, we're going to give up to, I believe, it was a $50,000 business loan that may be forgivable. What is the contradictory statement in there? How is it going to be a loan that's forgivable, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like the PPP STEMI checks that folks got that now they're going to prison and jail for, right? Because they took that money thinking that they didn't have to pay it back. So why make it a forgivable loan if you don't intend for people to pay it back? That would be called a grant. So then just grant it to them, right? But again, in the language, in the paperwork, what they said was, oh, blacks and others. And we know that that was the trick bag from the civil rights era, where everyone else got the benefits that were supposed to be allocated to Black Americans. And so Kamala Harris is doing the same thing that was done to us back in the 60s. And so this is no different. So this is a snapshot of the future here in Kitsap County. And so I ask you, as we close, who in this county is advocating for our needs and our interests? Who in this county who's running for office has spoken about these issues and saying, hey, we know that you guys are by far renting more than you are owning, that you by far are working jobs more than having careers. You by far, when you're working for some of the largest employers like the Navy or our city government, are not in positions of power, right? You don't see them at the highest levels. That you are struggling to make ends meet, buy food, pay your rent, have a livable wage. Uh, you are being penalized at every turn, and at the same time being demonized to go along, to get on board and vote and to keep voting because it is a quote unquote existential that we don't have a president that we've already had in office uh, to be reelected and to serve out another 4 years, right? Uh, we've gone for that back when it was Obama, and we went for that when it was Trump, and we went for that when it was Biden, and here we are again, and our lives are getting worse. They're not getting better as a whole. And so, no more. We are advocating for it uh, in 2025. We are pushing the League of Black Male Voters are going to be advocating for issues that affect Black males, suicide, incarceration, housing opportunities, and such. We just touched on a few this evening, and we will touch on more later. Should you want to get in touch with us and join us, if these things sound like things that are interesting to you, and you're like, yeah, I agree with all the things that you said, maybe you agree with most of them, reach out to us. We'd love to have you join us. You don't have to be a foundational uh, Black male in order to be a part of us. However, this is what we're advocating for, right? So we're not going to be co opted. Uh, we're not going to have folks that enter into our midst and then try to take us left or right and start advocating for other groups. We are a voice for foundational Black Americans. That's what we are. I want to give each of these fine gentlemen uh, a final word, and then I'll have Samuel take us out with prayer. So, you know what? I was going to start with Gylan, but I don't like the look on his face. Okay, that's better. I'll start with Rod, and then we'll go with Gylan, and then have Samuel give us final words of prayer.
This platform that we are creating, that we are putting out to everyone, is not to berate anything. Is basically to uplift. We're looking for unity. We're looking for the unification of the foundational Black male. So please, if you agree, if you feel akin to what we're speaking of, reach out to us. We're very welcoming. We love to hear what you have to say. All opinions matter in this point.
That support our goals. And Gylan?
We're looking for support. It'd be good if you did believe the things that we do, but like my fellow brother said, you don't necessarily have to agree with all of them. But if you do want to support, uh, I think that's what's important because we do all need to come together to address these issues. So uh, having support from different perspectives is always welcome, and it's a good thing. But if we're going to improve not only our situation but the country's as a whole situation, we do need to come together and find understanding.
Absolutely. And Samuel.
I would just put my prayer in a poem form.
Well, hold on. Give us your final thoughts before you pray us out.
My final thoughts are, this is an epic time in the world, but like we've all pointed out this evening with all these comments, a lot of this affects the African American population and homes more than any other race. So um, think hard about who you're going to vote for. Look at the issues you're voting for, and if, like you said, Marwan, Guyland, and Rod, if you like what you hear, come and be a part of this.
All right. And you can reach out to us at the Conduit Podcast Show at gmail.com. That is on the screen, the Conduit Podcast Show at gmail.com. And just to mention to you, it is difficult. We are in a gynocracy. We are very unique in the United States as a people. And as such, our default is to advocate for others and to advocate for others' interests. So when you hear me correct one of the other men on a particular position, that's because that has been ingrained to us from birth, right? And so it's very difficult for us to say no. We're advocating for our needs first and foremost, right? So that's what that is. All right, again, that's the Conduit Podcast Show at Gmail. Thank you for joining us, and we're gonna have Samuel pray us out.
In the shadow of his wings, that's where you'll find me. I'm playing on the clouds beneath the shelter of God's wings. Heaven's having a parade. The Lord has chosen me. I enter his courts with thanks and praise. I live my life to serve the King. The Lord, he rescued me when he died on Calvary. He said, I'll be hated for his name, but in the end, you'll be with me. Now our faith is on the line and we're running out of time. Move the cobwebs off your ear and raise the veil from off your eyes. He's our bright and morning star, and from this world we're set apart. He wants us all to be his bride. Just open up your heart. A baby is born, a loved one dies. Sometime we fall, sometime we rise. But through the blood of Jesus Christ, we shall be blessed for life.
All right, everyone. Make sure you put your clocks back tonight. As always, for Samuel, Guyland, and Rod,